Welcome to the Dad Level Podcast, episode 18. This week, we're going to talk about films and TV shows that we felt that didn't get a fair shake, that should have gotten continuations or more series. So we hope you enjoy. I want to talk about movies that needed more sequels or a continuing lineage, because you think about. Of course, James Bond has, 23 movies, 24 movies? I can't remember the count right now, but...
7, I think.
And, they're still looking at making more after Daniel Craig decides to step down. So, but...
That would make a good episode.
Yeah, so what about, I think of, the funny thing is, Indiana Jones, right? The perfect adventurer character that should have had that same legacy as James Bond, getting that constant treatment of every so many years they get a movie, instead of them shoehorning it in because there's a fan demand for the character, and we get Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which was a mediocre film at best. It was good to see Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones on screen, but it was he was put in a wacky, crazy situation that just didn't fit.
It was Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah. So, you think about and especially what they're doing with the new movie. Apparently, it's going to have time travel, and that apparently there's 2 different endings, and one of the endings has people in uproar, which is what's going to lead into a TV show. But basically, they go back in time and he meets, a younger version of himself, and they're trying to stop
a little kid named the Rainmaker.
No, but was it the Nazis from having time travel to start changing things or whatever, or something like that? Yeah. But apparently, in one of the endings, it's either both Indies die, and the female character that's with him takes over the role, which totally screws with everything. It should be if this is anything, this is a what if Indiana Jones movie, not a real continuation. But the other one was Old Indy Dies, which I don't think any one of them should die, considering the fact that that totally destroys everything from Young Indiana Jones. We know that Indy is an old man telling the story of what he dealt with in that TV show.
Yeah, and the one that had River Phoenix, right? Patrick Flannery.
Yeah, Sean Patrick Flannery. Yeah, So, but you literally could have told stories about him doing these grand adventures, like what they tried to do in some of the books and the comics back in the day, and it would have fit that whole serial type of things that Steven Spielberg and George Lucas were trying to do with Star Wars and Indiana Jones. But that's one. You think of well, I'll let y'all try to think of something. I have few that I don't know if they would be something that everybody would want to see a sequel of or a continuation on. For me, one of them would be Fright Night. Originally, there was going to be a third movie, but I would love to see the continuation of Peter Vincent and Charlie Brewster going around fighting other monsters besides vampires and dealing with the supernatural, and just their, the antics of this classic actor who is a B actor that was in B horror movies, dealing with these things he only thought of in film, werewolves or aliens or zombies. It would have been kind of really cool idea.
Yeah. For me, Kolchak would be one. Both the original TV series and the remake only had 1 season.
Mm-hmm.
Both were good. Neither one of them really had the chance to really do the character or the premise of the show justice.
Well, and Kolchak started as 2 TV movies, if I remember right, because it was
right.
You had Kolchak the Night. Well, it was Night Stalker. Yeah, it was Kolchak the Night Stalker was the first one, and that was the vampire. And then you had a second TV movie, which was a werewolf, and then you had the TV series that came out from it.
Felt from it, yeah.
Yeah. And the TV series was good, even for the 1 season that it ran. But yeah, The problem, that you run into stuff like that is now it's like why Constantine died, right? Like because Supernatural just took all the air in that
Yeah,
space.
it was in that genre, so it took away that aspect of what John Constantine was doing or would have done. I mean,
Right.
I'm sorry, but I love that Constantine show a lot, and I
Yes.
wish it would have.
Oh, I absolutely love it. Matt Ryan owns it.
Yeah.
So
He's the reason I'm following Legends to this point, because they've continued on and finished telling parts of the stories that the TV show didn't get to tell.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess to do a reverse of your overall idea for this, I don't think Supernatural should have gone for 30 season, 25, however many seasons it went.
900 seasons. No,
it's gone way too long. I'm glad that those two guys are getting paid. I'm glad everybody on that part of that show is getting paid. But God, I lost. How many times can you fight, God and the devil consistently, and then just? I mean, granted, Dragon Ball is doing it right. It's like we've literally fought.
Yeah,
upper tier people you can possibly find. Oh wait, there was another tier above that nobody knew about.
Oh, now we're going more into what's really cool about the new arc in the manga right now is they're dealing with some of the repercussions and the past mistakes of the Saiyans. So they're dealing with a new villain that apparently, from what we're kind of gathering, is that he made a wish with the one of the dragons to become the strongest fighter ever. But we think that his power is more along the lines. It's like he can see, like he was given the strength and abilities of and experiences of everything up to like the end of his life, so he knows everything. So he may be like, predicting how things are going to happen is where he's being able to manipulate the situation.
Yeah, but
it's different. It's something we've never dealt with in the Dragon Ball series.
But hasn't it been established? Like I haven't been following the manga really well. I think my brother was telling me about it because he's been kind of following along with it. But haven't they established at this point that like Goku he's like taking the angel route, right, with his powers? And Vegeta has not only become a god of destruction, is basically becoming a god of destruction. But he learned a power from the people who taught Goku instant transmission to where he can essentially vampire energy out of people. Is that how his ability works?
It works when so far, I mean, I may be wrong, but as far as I know, the ability works where if a character's fused or has absorbed life energy from other people, he can siphon it off to release it back to where it was. So like say, if we had a psychic vampire in the Dragon Ball universe that was taking life force like Maro was, he could be able to not only pull it back from them and then actually give it back to the people who died. So bringing them back to life essentially. But we're finding out because like I took it like this. Originally, whenever I watched Universal arc, you had Goku achieving Ultra Instinct. And I was like, okay, so at this point in time right now where he's at, he is the strongest he'll ever be. Because, with this ability, there's no villain that can like literally topple him. Honestly, because if you can predict a movement through instinct and like what he becomes, I mean, there's no one can stop you at this point. But you're finding out now that, he was at base tier of this. There's more to it. And now it's like he's learning all this thing. So it's like, but they're basically leading up to where, he's going to become like either a guardian to
Vegeta.
Zeno.
Vegeta.
Well, maybe.
I know.
I doubt that.
Yeah, it'll be Zeno. It'll be Zeno.
Yeah. So I mean, you got to be like, I mean, honestly, the best way to take this is that you're leaving Goku and Vegeta to a point where they're going to be able to move on. So Goku and them will take care of the big, galactic threats. Where like now Gohan and Goten and all them can step up to be the heroes going forward.
The fact that you think Akira Toriyama even remembers any of those other characters is adorable. Like Akira Toriyama has forgotten so much about all of the other side characters outside of Goku and Vegeta at this point.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure. I think he just
Well,
like
considering he's not really writing the new manga, it's not. It's one
This is
thing.
true.
So
This is true.
I mean, the only thing he's been doing is the movies, which I'm looking forward to whatever the next movie is going to be. And I know we got into a topic that I know Colin's not that very familiar about, and I apologize.
No, I'm familiar with everything but the manga.
Okay. So, you know,
I was able to follow and keep up.
Okay.
I just
no, it's okay. But you know, we're at a point right now where hopefully we'll get to see some of the stuff that's going on in the manga right now get to be animated. They'll continue Super Season 2 or whatever, and go from there, because there's some really good stuff with the last 2 arcs that they've been doing. You know, Monster Squad would be a good movie that needed to have sequels for it.
Okay.
You know, or even like have a sequel movie where it's like them older and they actually have a business that they've been going around taking care of stuff, and then maybe like their Sean's little sister is actually like their secretary or whatever, kind of like mirror the Ghostbusters, but with them as like these hunters that go out and hunt things, but still have the comedic elements with the seriousness. Would be kind of a cool idea.
Okay.
But
well, you've mentioned Ghostbusters. Real quick, what do you think about the sequel that's coming?
Uh,
I think Afterlife's going to be great. I really have high hopes for it, honestly.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that it revives it, because that's another series that didn't get its proper due. It had a lot of potential.
No, and you know, a lot of it was between like, you know, some of the falling out between 2 with Bill Murray and them, and you know, it not being exactly what he expected. Plus, I think at that time too, he wasn't very he didn't like to do a whole lot of sequels. You know, so and that's really hard, you know, because you have a character that people gravitate to, and you know, he doesn't want to be a part of it. You know, the closest we've gotten to actually a real sequel that connects to that timeline was the Ghostbusters video game, and that was really good. But yeah, Ghostbusters is another really big missed opportunity. You know, Aliens is another good missed opportunity. I'm sorry, but if
that's not for lack of trying. That's
just true. I mean, honestly, actually, what I honestly would like, I would love to see like the universe that Cameron expanded in Aliens from Alien to be, you know, seeing more in the universe of like these colonial marines, not the same ones, but other aspects of the universe that are going on that doesn't have to revolve around the xenomorph. You know, that was what was really cool, was like the movie Outland, which was heavily connected to a lot of things with Alien, because a lot of some of the people that worked on Alien worked on Outland with Sean Connery, and it fits in the universe. It feels like it fits in the universe. So it's kind of like, it's not really official, but a lot of the connective tissue are there, and it's a great movie. So it's like, I would love to see more movies that we get to play around in certain universes that don't have to deal with the main characters.
Well, I mean, the only problem that you run into with that is like all this is like what happened with Halloween, right?
Yes.
Where you had season
that is true.
Went into it and they're like, "Where's Michael Myers?" Like you go to an Aliens movie and it's nothing but, you know, colonial marines running around. And you're just like, "Wait, I came to see Alien, not Starship Troopers. What's going on?"
Even though it was everything in that movie was Starship Troopers, down to even like the females became pilots. So back to the whole thing with Halloween. You know what John Carpenter wanted to do? It was supposed to be a horror of the Halloween. You know, some kind of new horror that he would tell a scary story going on forward. But there was so much from the studio wanting Michael Myers to be back. He's like, well, okay, well, I'll make 2 to kill off Michael Myers, and then I'll be able to do what I want. And he didn't even get to direct the 3rd movie, Season of the Witch, which I still love that movie. It's a great movie.
It just needs to be another thing altogether.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the thing that suffered from the fact that it was originally what he intended to do, but it needed to have its own title. It technically just needed to get rid of the Halloween. And that's sad thing is that, like, you know,
I agree with that. Yes.
You know, that when you think of Halloween, you can't just have a vignette of horror stories. You gotta have, it's like Michael Myers automatically pops in your head. And so the fans, if they don't want it, they're going to reject it, which is, of course, what we're talking about with, like, you know, stuff from nostalgia and everything else, like we did the last episode.
And I think you know, there are where you won't see big budget stuff like that when it comes to horror. Horror, especially, I think is one of the easier ones to do. And in fact, last Friday that was the last week for the last drive-in. The last set of movies that Joe Bob did for Shudder, he was interviewing Roger Corman, and Roger Corman was talking about, you know, he was talking about all the work that he did on all of the low budget sci-fi movies that he started off with, and he was really talking about how horror is really the genre that indie filmmakers can get into easier than anything right now, right?
Yeah.
And so I think more than anything, horror is really the easiest one that you can do those kind of crazy out there concepts, because that's what people have come to expect from horror, right? A lot of horror nowadays isn't just slashers. Now you have stuff like you know, Hereditary and Midsummer and The Witch and all this stuff that's really crazy, cerebral, like out there, nutty nonsense. And but people eat it up because it's good stuff. And it really seems like for people who want to do high concepts like that of, I want to do a series of movies, but I mean, we already saw it with the Haunting series, right? You had the first season had absolutely nothing to do with the second season, and for some people, right, that tonal shift really messed them up, and they didn't like the second season. Like me personally, I wanted more horror in the second season. It was too much about the interconnected relationship and the people, and there wasn't as much, like, the ghosts didn't have their due, it really felt like in that series. But still, you had that ability, right? It still had the Haunting title, you still had an overall kind of similar setup, but you were telling a different set of stories with a different set of characters. And it really seems like more than anything, that's the genre that you can go to kind of do that these days. So if there is any hope that John Carpenter could ever have of resurrecting his idea, or someone else coming along to resurrect that idea of his, you know, Shudder would probably lap that crap up in a second and try and get it going. They're already, well, no, it's Blumhouse, right, that's working on the new Thing movie, along with Carpenter and them, if I remember right. Yeah, Blumhouse was the one doing that, but still, same concept applies.
Well, and then you think about, like, you know, movies that have vignettes, or Creepshow, you know, where Creepshow is like each episode is its own little horror, you know. I just don't know if, you know, people have the attention span to, at least the Western audiences. And, you know, that may not be a discredit to anyone, but, you know, our acceptance of certain things is different than, like, you know, Eastern culture, you know, Europe. There's the movie anime that's coming out finally on Blu-ray that I'm looking forward to. Memories was the guy who created Kira, who put this one together, and it's 3 stories about, one is a sci-fi story set in the future, where a group of salvage crew that stumble upon a derelict ship with a distress signal. When they get on the ship, it has this, if you find out, it's basically this old opera singer's ship she was on, and she haunts it, and she's been collecting souls, and it's a really good, really creepy story. Well, the next one is about a guy that ends up taking a pill that he produces this gas that kills everybody, and it's just like this hilarious kind of, like, scary in the same moment, of this guy trying to figure out what's wrong going and trying to get help, but people are trying to kill him. The military's trying to kill him because he's going to kill everybody with what's going on. And then the last one is basically kind of like, I guess, a commentary on, you know, countries that are constantly at war, but they live for war. That's all they do. They look for firing the next missile off at, you know, their opponent. Like, even the little kids are like, they're all in this war completely, you know. Like, you're indoctrinated from birth to to want to assault this other country, but you never see the other country.
Okay.
But yeah, just like that one, and like Robot Chronicles, where it has like several different stories about robotic themes. That one was really good. That was
yeah. Or on Netflix, they have the what is it? Love,
Death
hate.
Robot. Yeah, Love, Death,
Love, Death,
Robots.
and Robots. There we go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and more than anything, right? It seems
Black Mirror is like that too.
That's right. Yeah, I watched a couple episodes of Black Mirror and I didn't understand the hype, but it's different strokes for everybody.
Yeah.
But it really seems like rather than big epic, like you talking about the Indiana Jones movies and them trying to do serials, right? It's hard. It's really hard to nail that kind of stuff movie wise, especially if you're talking about wanting to do so many like multiple.
It's such a big gamble now,
right? Because everything costs. Like blockbusters are such a huge thing, or at least they were pre-pandemic. We'll see how well they recover as time moves along. But it really seems like with the advent of streaming services and everything, it's really turning into the miniseries, right? The miniseries is really what's becoming the dominant form of media for people to go in and absorb. It's Stranger Things and again, like the Love, Death, and Robot stuff. It's these little 8-episode seasons that everybody can kind of sit down over a weekend and binge through and then talk about the water cooler the next day. It's almost like back in the day when people would watch Dallas, right, every week, and they would come into work and they would talk about it, right? Now you have that similar deal with these miniseries that are done online, and you could conceivably get away with doing the kind of show like if you were to try and do old pulps, right? If you're going to try and do old pulp stories and you're going to go for the gimmick of it needs to end on a cliffhanger, just like the old pulps did, then you would do that in a miniseries rather than a movie kind of deal. That's how you would progress that idea of Indiana Jones. And then whenever, almost like comics, right? Whenever you're getting ready to do your big epic event, that's maybe whenever you do a movie to kind of encompass that moment. But it would still need to be a standalone thing. You might be doing little callbacks to episodes from the series, but you would have a movie to be able to encapsulate that once. But part of that is establishing an audience, right? You got to make sure an audience is there, willing to come and see it, willing to spend the money for it. And then once they've established, oh, hey, we've got this audience, that's whenever it tells the studio, oh, okay, now we can go spend money on this big thing because now we know it's for real. People are into it. People are willing to come pay for it. And that's where, that's where a lot of the experimentation's lost, right? It's just no one's willing to put up the money to do, a big budget, crazy nonsense movie that just looks crazy and that's enough to draw people in. It's like everything's got to be name recognition now, and that's where a lot of it gets lost.
Yeah, and I think that's where that goes. The whole thing of our topic for like the next time I can actually get everybody together to actually do it. But why the 80s and 90s were such a great time for film, because I think at that point there was so much experimentation and chances taken on stuff. Everybody wanted to capitalize on Star Wars, that type of filmmaking. And then, the funny thing is, like, you talk about movies that should have done better in theaters, but didn't, may have been just like timing. It may have been like audience just not okay with what was going on in the movie. Maybe they just weren't right in their life to process it, but like The Thing, E.T. came out the same time. Of course, everybody wants to go to see the fun-loving alien instead of the alien that's inside you that, rips your body apart and eats your friend's face. Yeah. Because, we don't want to think about the fact that if we were in a situation like those guys, would we be paranoid? Would we be worried about, where our meals are going to come? And, did I have interaction with this person who's infected? It shows you kind of like where we are in a society, where we still are in a society. Some people don't want to have to face those things in their mind or in their life.
Well, and even more than that, right? It's almost like on the one hand, yeah, that stifles some movies, but at the same time, it's kind of some movies, that's how they get that following, right? Like Boondock Saints. Boondock Saints it didn't come to theaters, or it came to theaters then was immediately pulled because Columbine happened like a week or two, either right after its release or right before its release, and it just killed that movie until it got new life in video, right? And that's when it blew up and became what it was. But it was that struggle for it. Or Dredd, right? Dredd had like no marketing to it. There was absolutely nothing to that movie, and it comes out and it bombs, and then everybody goes and watches on video, and they're like, "When the hell did this movie come out? This is amazing!" Yeah. And then it died on the vine, and it's like, so yeah. There's another movie series that unfortunately did not get to do, and Carl Urban's too busy just killing it on The Boys to be bothered to throw on the helmet again. Although I know he said in multiple interviews
he said he would do it.
He's more than willing to put the helmet back on, and by God, man, I want him to do it, because I want to see them get to God. What's the one character? There's the one dude who's like a vampire. I'd love for them to see Judge Death would be awesome.
Yeah.
There's just so much good stuff that they could. But even then, right? Judge Death is like one of those weird, crazy, out there concepts. Dredd, the movie that they've done so far, have been pretty grounded. You start throwing weird, possessing the four horsemen judges at people, they're gonna be like, what the hell did I step into? Yeah. But you ease them into it just like the comics do, and you're on board for the ride. So come third or fourth movie, I'm all in. We're doing it.
Exactly.
I mean, so for me, going back to the anime,
and this is why I got this question, as far as like movies that deserve more. I know one of my dad's favorite movies is Buckaroo Banzai.
Yes.
So for me, it's like, it was, I turned 40 this year. It was just a little beyond my time. Like a little bit. So and I don't remember my dad ever showing us that movie until like, in my 20s. And it wasn't one of those things that like I gravitated to. I see the appeal. I just recently watched it. It's like, well, this is a movie that could have worked for being a serial. Even, it just fits the characteristics and things that would have worked for it. It even ends like it's a freaking TV show. With them walking and, all the main characters walking out like nothing happened. And so, but Peter Weller was a great actor. I mean, he did so much stuff, and this is like a missed opportunity that could have been going on, but we may have not had RoboCop, or we would have had somebody else play RoboCop, depending on.
Like Joel Kinnaman.
Well, and I mean, the sad thing about it is that it kind of goes to something that we've lightly touched on before, right? Of people who want to do remakes, right? And they're always wanting to do remakes of stuff that everybody already loves and has seen and everything. Where the remakes that were done in the 80s were a bunch of B movies that were fine, right? But then they spiced them up. Yeah. They made them crazy. They added tons of gore effects. They changed the whole thing. It's like Buckaroo Banzai is another great example. Like that's I mean, in circles, right? It's very well known, but to the general audience as a whole, it's not. And you have, Doctor Who that's been going on forever now, and you could easily take something like Buckaroo Banzai that has that big open space, of a playground to kind of mess around in, right? And use that as a backdrop to create, like I was saying, earlier, creating a kind of mini series where you can do that whole, each episode could be its own little adventure of them going around playing their concerts and doing all their nonsense and all that. And
yeah, you could have a TV show that would be based off of that easily, or play up on like if they did a new movie, have it to where they travel in time and stuff, and they go through a dimension where they just happen to look like different people, but get actors who look like them close enough to represent them in the new movie, and be like the whole Don Cheeto thing. It's me. Get over it.
But yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that could be easily done. It's just, it's trying to,
Find that audience. It's just to see if it's
well,
going to be
it's
valuable.
not only trying to find the audience right, but it's also trying to find a person to really get behind it. I was watching a video of Maximilian talking about Killer Instinct, and there was a whole interview that was done, I guess, with some of the head guys at Microsoft, and they were talking about how they wanted to do stuff with Killer Instinct and all this stuff, and they were kind of name dropping it around. But Max was talking about the fact that if you really listen to the interview, what they're really saying is, we want to do something, we just don't really have anybody here that's willing to do it. And he started going through, because I think he was tied to a lot of the production of Killer Instinct, at least at some point, right? And he was talking about how there was just all these people that were like really big, Killer Instinct fans that just were passionate about making that game. And so they went in there and they were doing stuff unpaid. They were putting in time. They did everything in their power to make that game come out and be what it was. And it was great. And it went, 3.5 seasons beyond its launch. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's where a lot of this, and again, those guys in the 80s that made those movies, they were big fans of the Fly and the thing from outer space, all that stuff. And it's just finding someone who's that passionate about something that's come before, and they just have that desire of, you know what, if I can just get the right people in place and just make this a little bit, just shine it up a little bit and put it out there, people might also find that same joy that I had from before. Mm-hmm. Or you just make a 4-hour remake of King Kong that puts people to sleep.
Which is still good, but yeah. It's funny because when you're growing up, you may have some taste, and then as you get older, you start to change with what you like. For films, it's one of those big things. I remember, Back to the Future, and which, it's sad what happened to Michael J. Fox. The fact that his acting career kind of like got halted because of what happened, or completely ended.
Speaking of Michael J. Fox, The Frighteners.
Yeah, that's another movie that could have been
that had so much more potential to go on.
Mm-hmm.
That movie was so good. One of Peter Jackson's earliest
films, yeah,
and great movie. So much potential. And they even left it open-ended in case they wanted to move forward with it by having that, was it the FBI guy there at the end hanging out with him as a ghost? I mean, there was so much more potential that, they could have done with that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's one of those things where if they rebooted it and got the right guy, they could go back and make it earlier stuff to it that leads up to that. Or
someone who looks younger. It's
not Ryan Reynolds because they want him for everything. Although he would be a really good in that movie.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then it's funny thing. Me and Dad will do these whole things where we'll talk about if we could get a remake of a movie or a movie that continues on with something. And I know that it's funny because I Timothy Oliphant.
Yeah.
I think that he'd be a perfect, if they did like Han Solo with just telling the stories about, Luke from the EU stuff, be perfect, I think. And then, because I know he played the sheriff in that town using Boba Fett's armor and stuff, but I felt that he could play on the level as Harrison Ford's Han Solo, you could do the same thing with him and Indiana Jones. If you decided to do a continuation, or maybe him younger, more adventures with him a short round, it could work.
I mean, I'm definitely down for Timothy Oliphant playing a bounty hunter of some kind in the Star Wars universe. That would be
that'd be cool too.
Or just an entire series trying to hold down that little desert town.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, for me, and I've mentioned it before, and they are doing a continuation of it eventually at some point. But I said for years I wanted more Vamp Hunter D, right? And now that series is coming out for it. It boggles my mind that it took, like, we hit the whole like vampire wave of crap for so long, and I'm just sitting there, I'm like, Bloodlust came out when? Like, come on, guys. Like, you're doing all these other vampire shows, Rosario plus Vampire, and this and Vampire, and this anime Vampire, blah blah blah. It's like, where's D? Like, Castlevania gets this awesome like rendition on Netflix. I'm like, where's the OG Alucard? Come on.
Yeah, where is Alucard in the future? Because technically that's what it is.
Yeah, like, and that's another show that has the concept is just so cool of being able to have, just that dystopic, futuristic, but still old technology stuff, right? With the mechanical horses, all that nonsense. It's like, just I want so much more of that. And I've only read a handful of the books, and the books are, translated young adult novel stuff, so they're not exactly, high fiction or anything, but I don't really read them necessarily for the stories themselves, but like the concepts of them. Like, there's one where he gets pulled into like this dream world of this little girl that you find out that his dad had like experimented on, and she's like trying to get him to help her. And meanwhile, like, in the dream, it's like murdering off all these people, and whatever it is that's in the dream keeps trying to kill D. And it's just a cool thing that you can't really do in a lot of other areas, or at least you wouldn't really see it. And with Netflix doing The Witcher, it's like The Witcher kind of fills that niche a little bit in me, because he's vaguely D-ish. He's a little bit more talkative, but I like that idea of, the lone stranger wandering into a town, having Yojimbo, Sanjuro, the Man with No Name trilogy, like all those little like Western samurai concepts done so long ago, right? That are just
the drifter that comes in and fixes the problem in the town and moves on to the next.
That's right.
So, well, and another one for me would be Akira actually being the full manga into an anime. That I know that they were in talks doing that, like back in 2019. I heard some kind of rumors about it happening. I'm like, that needs to be done, because I love that movie. That movie's so great, but the manga itself is so much better. And if that needs to be animated into like a 9-season show, or at least as many of the, I think it's 7 books, so animating that into a full-on, the whole fall of society, the gangs rising up, the colonel working with Kaneda and all them to take out Tetsuro, all that stuff would be great. But
well, you got the movie.
I got the movie, but
right.
I mean, at least like, I got the movie for Ghost in the Shell, but I have the manga, but then I got so much more for Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah, all the shows, the multiple.
It needs that same love.
Yeah, it's funny which ones really like took off and which ones just kind of because Akira is one of those like iconic movies from back in the day. It's like Ninja Scroll, but then Ninja Scroll had a TV show,
a TV series,
but does anyone even remember that series? It's just kind of like, because if I remember right, it wasn't anything like the movie. Like, it kind of was, but not really.
Yeah. Well, it was almost a retelling, but it was definitely different.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where it's funny to look back and see like which iconic series really took off and went. It's like, I would love to say I would like to have seen more Hakusho, but I feel like Hakusho was just fine with how it ends with, they're becoming a new king of hell and all that stuff. And it's like, yeah, I'm fine with that ending. But something like Spawn, right? Spawn would be awesome to see. I still, to this day, the video games for the Darkness were made. I would still love to see, and I know that you had the Witchblade TV series for a little bit, but like, again, when all the gangster stuff was big and going on, it's like, I would have loved to have seen a movie or a series of Jackie dealing with the darkness and having all the little goblin darkness minions and him messing with them and all that. Like Top Cow, I don't know why they've never tried to do more with their stuff. I guess the Darkness games never really sold well enough. I know the end of the second one, if you got secret ending, it teased Angelus, but it didn't really, they haven't done anything since then. It's like, I don't know, man. I don't know what it takes to get just people to just get on board with certain concepts, right?
So that like my favorite anime series of all time is Bio Booster Armor Guyver. Then we got 2 movies, one with Mark Hamill and one with David Hayter. And I felt the second movie was much better, but we never really got a good adaptation of the original manga live action, or the anime live action. And to actually have the monsters look like the monsters from the source material. But the sad thing is like we'll never have that story finished because the writer stopped writing it, and then it went to like here in the States it stopped at like volume 7, but in Japan it went up to like 27 or no 30 31 I think, or something like that, and he just stopped writing it, and we only got 2 anime series and 1 OVA. The second anime series went further than the first one, but it didn't completely finish the story enough to give more. I think it like gave us more of a problem with like wanting more than the original anime series did. But like, talk about a missed opportunity. Why don't we have like Arc System Works making a Guyver game, fighting game? And make it bloody and everything, and like Show walking out and going Guyver, and it forms on him all anime style, and then.
But I don't know. I don't know if you've got enough of a fall. I mean, granted, they made stuff like Melty Blood and all that kind of stuff, right? But that was back when they were still making niche stuff. That was before they made Dragon Ball and became the big studio that they are now. So the closest you can hope for that. And I'm tired of anime arena fighters. I'd love for them to just do 2D like Jump All Stars again. But thinking of cartoon series though, one group that I've never understood why, again, why don't they do more is Nintendo did all of those just awful cartoon. I mean, great cartoons.
Well, excuse me, princess.
Yeah. It's like, how have we not had another Zelda series anywhere, right?
Yeah,
it's
like an actual Japanese animated Zelda series.
They've done the mangas for the games.
Yes, they've
done the mangas for the games. It's like, where is that show? Because again, that's another, it's like it's another concept show that would be you have instant name recognition, right? It's like all the problems that you have trying to get a new show off the ground. Name recognition, you'd have to get good visuals, all that, right? But you've got name recognition already. Like your biggest attempt to get a foothold into an audience, you instantly have an audience of tons of little nerds that are ready and willing to watch Link fight Ganon minions week by week and tear them apart. And it's like, where is that, Nintendo? Like, I get that they're focused on their games and their game division and all that. We love them for it and everything, but y'all are sitting on just money, minting presses.
Yes.
And you just sit on them, and we all look at you and go, "What are you doing?"
Like, if we're going to talk about that, honestly, we got to talk about the fact that with Nintendo and how they do any kind of release that they do, especially their limited editions, that they go, "Oh, we'll release this at a later date," and then like the next day, it's up on pre-order, and all the bots got it, so you're not able to get the pre-order. Why aren't you making enough? Because people want this. People are willing to give you money directly for this stuff, but you'd rather do it limited, so that way the scalpers can come in and make more money than what you profited from when you sold it the first time.
And just, yeah.
But back to what you're saying too, though, honestly, with Link though, he wouldn't have a full voice, right? He'd just have the grunts and the and all that stuff. Because
I don't want him to talk.
Yeah,
I just want him to go.
I'm fine with that.
But everybody else talks in the whole anime.
Yeah, everybody else talks fluently, and you understand everything that's going on. He grunts and groans and grabs chickens and flies through the air. That's what I want.
Yes, I'm more. No, excuse me, princess. I'm more than fine if they never do that. But it's like it's stuff like that, right? Where you kind of look at it, and I mean, cartoons in general, right, have kind of fallen off overall. Like, does Marvel even have an ongoing series now? I know they had Spider-Man going for a while. They had an X-Men series going for a while. I don't even think they have.
I don't pay attention so much to any of that. I have no clue.
There's a new Spider-Man series coming. I just don't know much about it.
Right, but it feels like they're like, while the movies were going big, they just kind of forgot about the small screen. And DC's always been good about being on the small screen, right? They've been churning out their animated movies forever. Your mileage may vary depending on how you feel about the recent storylines that they've been adapting, but it's one of those things where you kind of look at it and you go, like sitting down and watching like Courage with my daughter, right? And I was thinking about all the cartoon series that I watched as a kid, and I'm like, man, I don't know what the current equivalent. Like, the only series that I can think of that's had a fairly consistently going run of cartoons really is Ninja Turtles.
Scooby-Doo.
Scooby-Doo has been pretty good. Yes, it's like Scooby-Doo and the Ninja Turtles are about the only one. I mean, Ninja Turtles is the only one I can think of where, okay, there was the one that I grew up with. There was the one that was a little bit past me. And then there was the awesome CG animated one that ran forever. And now they've got this new one that
is not for us at all.
when I heard Raph being the leader, I was like, really, guys?
He's larger than the other turtles.
I mean, look, they did that with the old one, right? Where they made them physically different from each other. And I was fine with that. It was just kind of, I wasn't a big fan. The art style isn't really something that I jive with.
To me, it's equivalent to Teen Titans Go. I like Teen Titans back in the day.
Yeah.
But the Go stuff, it's like, I don't need the chibi version of this stuff. It's like, yeah, it appeals to like my niece and nephew, but like my niece and nephew don't watch that stuff anymore. I mean, they don't watch. I mean, my son. I mean, we don't watch any of that. He's too busy watching YouTube or what we put on for him to watch, unfortunately.
I mean, like, we tuned in for all the episodes that dealt with The Night Begins to Shine, right? Where they like put on the whole 80s pastiche to everything. But that was because it felt like an actual like coherent story that they were telling, not just a random event in their life for a day. Although the initial episode was that, but it was like, at that point I was like, man, the character designs, like the world design, the animation to it is like, this looks really good. I would watch an entire show just in this universe of Teen Titans where it's just mega 80s, right?
Yeah.
The synth music and neon and mohawks and bullshit. And I'm more than fine with watching hours of that. That'd be great. And then they went back to normal Teen Titans Go, and I was like, okay, I guess we're going back to watching Gumball and whatever DVDs that I have that we can watch reruns of, because I can't.
All right, David, I got one for you.
All righty.
Since you brought up Courage and you're getting into that again with your daughter, what do you think about the Scooby movie that's coming out in September?
Oh, the one they're teaming up with Courage the Cowardly Dog?
That's the one.
That's awesome. I like that.
It's a no-brainer. That's the way my kids explained it. It's a no-brainer. Why it took them this long to get there, how many of them are going to know Courage, but I'm thinking that somewhere along the way, Courage is going to get rebooted or brought back to the front because of it.
Yeah, I mean, I just going back and we rewatched the first 4 episodes of Courage, and it's just such a good show, right? It's using a bunch of cool horror concepts, and it's just introducing them in such a good way, because there's still such a good creepiness factor to Courage. Everything about it is this weird, unsettling, but at the same time entertaining and funny, right? Like there's so few TV shows that I'll sit down with my daughter with, and she'll actually sit down and stay with me and watch. And man, when I turned on Courage, she was locked in, blowing through it. And it wasn't until we got to was it Freaky Fred that she was like, I don't like this guy, I want to watch something else. And so we went and started watching something else. But up until that time, right, all the episodes, every last one of them, she was just locked into it. And she's a big fan of Scooby-Doo because she's all about animals, right? So I haven't told her about that yet, but now that she's kind of aware of who Courage is and already know who Scooby is, I'm sure she'll be right on board with all that.
Well, I would just wait till it comes out and say, "Look what I got."
Right? Yeah, that was basically what I did with what Batman meets the Ninja Turtles. I was like, "Hey kids, y'all want to see Batman, beat up Shredder?" What? Like, yeah, let's go watch Batman beat up Shredder, and we'll go with this.
Yeah, Edward watched that one with me, and the Batman Ninja. So, with the giant mechs, I thought that was my favorite part of that movie was the giant mechs, which is ridiculous.
That was such a weird movie, but
yeah,
it was different. It was definitely different. I'm fine with different. It hits for some folks and doesn't hit for others, but yeah, I mean, there's so many good, just fertile plots of land out there for them to go back and either retill or just go back to, right, to dig
explore.
into them.
I mean, yeah, I have like Jason and the World Warriors on DVD, that whole series. I have like Defenders of the Earth, like all the Transformers and G.I. Joe and the Ghostbusters. There's so much stuff that between like me, you, and my dad, and calling on everybody that we could like. They have like a whole library of things that they can just like consume. That is just
so
content.
One series that I've tried to find forever, and I almost got it one time, and then it like sold out. And it's hard as shit to find. And going back to the kind of pulp sort of storylines to it, show that I remembered very well and I just absolutely loved, Mighty Max.
Oh man,
right?
Yeah, but you can't find it.
No, you can't.
Mm-mm.
And that drives me nuts. I'm like, I want to go back and rewatch that entire series for real. And all it is like crappy, versions in like Spanish on YouTube. And I'm like, what is this garbage? Or it's like a little bit 5-minute segments of episodes.
Everything. You got to watch like 15 of them to get the first episode.
Yeah. And it's like, no, I badly would love to see them go back. It's like whenever they did what was it, the Real Adventures of Johnny Quest or the New Adventures of Johnny Quest or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Again, you go back and you take something that was before, you just shine it up and go and put it back out there and let it roll and get people back into it. Like Mighty Max would be a great again,
because
it goes back to just adventure and a creepiness factor to things that you could play into it. That would just be so good.
What was it? The one thing that's great about Mighty Max is that you like literally relaunch the series right now, and it would be a continuation of the original series, because if you watch the original series, Max goes back in time with the hat, having all the memories of everything he did to try to change it so it doesn't end the same way the last time.
It's very, yeah, he Dark Towers it.
Yeah, he does. He Dark Towers. He was the first Roland before Roland, I think. Actually, yeah, he was. He was before Roland. He did it. So maybe Stephen King got that idea from Mighty Max.
All right, here's one. It was a Ben 10 spinoff, and I cannot remember the name of it. He had something to do where he could like do stuff with brain fart. Huh? No, not Ben 10. The spinoff they did was they eventually did the two shows together. The kid, he could like merge with, he could like Generator Rex. Thank you, Patrick.
Okay.
Generator Rex. That was a good show. They did a lot of stuff with it, but I felt that by the time they were done with it, they didn't get where they really wanted to go with it.
Yeah.
I need to go back and find some of that because I actually really enjoyed that show. Because it was like they took the idea, okay, we have these Ben 10 fans, but some of them are a little more mature. We got this one here that's an offering that's something, it'd be an alternative to the constant kid stuff.
Yeah.
Well, and they actually touched on the more advanced ideas when they did the crossover between the two shows.
Well, what was it? I know the Gravity Falls had connection to Rick and Morty.
Oh, Gravity Falls is a fantastic show.
Yes, that was very good stuff.
Yeah. What else? It's funny too because like a series that needed to continue that was really short lived, animated on Cartoon Network, Thundercats, the remake.
Oh, was the remake?
Yeah, that needed to be continued. I mean, like G.I. Joe Renegade needed to be continued. Both of those were great series, but because of whatever reason, I know one of them was because at least for the toy sales for Thundercats weren't great, which, they should have got a better, company to make the toys instead of what they went with. And then G.I. Joe Renegade, it was because it was on a channel. What was it? I can't remember the name of the channel, but it was a channel that you had to have cable for. I mean, most of those you had to have cable for, but you could have had it on Cartoon Network instead of
Boomerang?
No, it wasn't related to those. It was some other channel, cartoon channel. My dad would probably remember. I had to ask him. But great show. It went, I think, one season. Didn't even finish it out. Trying to think of some other ones that were like that.
All right. While you're thinking about it, let's bring up He-Man.
Well, that's another one. I mean, you had the original He-Man series, and you had New Adventures of He-Man, which is Prince Adam going into space and dealing stuff off-world of Eternia. I know I enjoyed that one with my dad. And then you had the 2002 remake series, which was really good. And then now you have the new one with Kevin Smith, and it's like we don't even know if it's really about He-Man. I mean, if you have He-Man in the title and he's not even like in it, so is it really He-Man or is it just Masters of the Universe?
Right, and that's where it's like the first, like the preview for the first episode looks amazing, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
You watch that trailer and you're like, all right, if this is the series, I'm in 100%, right? But then you go and you read the description of what the series is, and it seems like, okay, first episode is going to be what everybody wants, and then it's going to dovetail off to everybody else and not be about He-Man, like what you're saying, right? It's like now they're all going to have to go on their quest to go find the sword and all that. It's like, oh, okay, so it has ceased to be about He-Man and now it's about everybody else. It's like, why are we, I get you're trying to tell new stories, right? And who knows, if they can strike the right tone and they can get the right balance to it, it might work. It's just at this point you're almost like gun shy whenever they pull this kind of stuff of, all right, who are you replacing Adam with? Just who are you replacing Adam with? Because it's coming, right?
Well, and then the whole thing about
the
them,
fear that you have about it.
Yeah. Then them doing the whole thing with having Adam, the possible thing that the big reveal that he was He-Man all along. It's like, really? They're gonna like freak out because the prince was He-Man? I mean, that's bad storytelling. I mean, really bad storytelling.
Well, that's like with Frozen. When the first time I ever watched Frozen, and I was sitting there and I'm like, okay, the first 5 minutes of this movie, they've established that their main export is ice, and they're going to like tar, feather, and burn an ice witch, a person who can literally
keep them in business.
Make sure that they never lose their like form of income. I don't understand that.
Yeah,
like, I get what you're going for the message of your movie, but the setup for it is so dumb, and not well thought through. It's just one of those things where it's like,
so it's in all intents and purposes, it's so excuse me for this like bizarre reference. Edward Scissorhands, you know, the only reason why the town snows is because now he's locked up there and he's carving ice sculptures up there. And so the town snows because of it. That's how the town snows.
But even that I would say is a better description and reason for okay, this makes sense more than just we hate this thing because it would make sure that we can always put food on our tables. But
yeah, it would have been better if like they like entrapped her.
Guy, oh, hey everybody, the guy that's literally been saving us forever turns out to be this other guy. Damn you, man. Why did you betray us? It's like, no, he saved your ass how many countless times? Like, what are you talking about? Why are you upset with that? That doesn't make sense.
Oh,
or
yeah.
Maybe it will. We'll see.
Well, it's that whole thing of like, you know, did you ever play Wild Arms?
No, I never did play Wild Arms.
So like when you play Rudy's story at the very beginning of the game, because you can play between the three characters like before you actually meet up and everything, it kind of is like a way to like teach you the game mechanics of how things are going to work. Well, like, you know, Rudy, he goes and saves this this village kid from this cave because his mom's sick. So he was going to go grab this flower that could be used to make a herb. Well, they remove the flower, which unleashes this ancient demon or whatever. And the flower was what was keeping it sealed away. And all the villages there, when the entrance to the cave, when they show back up, and then this demon comes out, and then Rudy's all like, all right, he takes it out with a gun. And they're like, oh my God, he uses guns, so we got to let him go. He's got to get out of the town, even though he just saved us from being destroyed. Then you're banished from the town. That's like, what?
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, they use magic. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like,
it's magic.
You can make it work under certain circumstances. It's just you gotta have good establishing like lead up to it. It's like, okay, you guys are idiots for doing this, but in world it makes sense for y'all to be idiots. But yeah, it is what it is.
Which is funny because like even in Vampire D Bloodlust, whenever they find out that D's inside the town and he's a dumb peer, they're like, oh my God, we're gonna kill him. And the guy's like, you know, he's the one who saved me back in like, you know, 50 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but that's again, it goes to knowing the lore of the Vampire Hunter D series. It's mankind has been like terrorized by vampires forever. And with Dompiers, you never know when their vampire side is going to take over because of like
or
the
they're going to be bad body. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. When are they going to turn? And D is able to control it just because of the power of his bloodline.
Yep.
But others, right, they've had moments where they'll turn on them. So they just drive them out, right, constantly because they can't trust them. It's like, okay, again, that's where it's like you have in world, it makes sense why they're driving him out, even though he's done all these good things. And that dude literally had to hold that entire town at gunpoint with that big ass rifle just to allow D to get out, right, without being run out. But it's one of those things. But even that guy, right, pointed out, he's like, you guys are a bunch of idiots for driving him away over this. But yeah, it's damn. They need to hurry up with that series. It needs to be good. For the love of God, don't be like cheap, horrible Netflix animation level stuff. I guess that's not fair. Some Netflix animation's fine. Other Netflix animation is horrible, choppy trash. I hope it's good animation. Like make it Madhouse. Like Madhouse do it. I don't know who's doing the animation of it. I want it to be beautiful, fluid.
It needs to be just like Castlevania animation.
Yes, just like Castlevania. Just have it look like that, and just have D going around doing D things, and I will be happy, so happy.
So another anime series that I think we were going to talk about before with you, David, was I got to remember which episode it was. So I don't know if you were even on here. So this is one of my dad's favorite ones. It's called Digital Target Gray. So basically it follows a guy that So it's set in the far future. Towns have these small cities have like wars between these other cities, and depending on how many people you kill, you get ranked up. And the higher your rank, you get the chance to go to this paradise or whatever, this city that has everything that's run by androids, and you never have to worry about food or anything for the rest of your life. So, but he's the only one that, like, every time he goes out with a unit, he's the only one that comes back alive. And well,
the more you're describing this, I think y'all did tell me about this before.
Yeah. So it's such a great manga because it goes like through this whole thing of like, you find out about like there being the city is actually controlled by an AI computer, which you know about, but it's actually bad. It's actually the whole thing is them been trying to eradicate mankind in a way that they don't know that they're trying to be eradicated. And then there's like this resistance group that he comes into contact with that like blow him up half the shit. So like they have to retrofit his body with like stuff to survive. So he's almost become more android than he is human. And then it's just like, and then he confronts the city, and then it ends. But it's the original movie only goes up to a certain point because it only got released as a movie. It didn't get released as a series. But that would be a great series to like continue or to be completely animated.
Thinking of a show that got an anime movie, but then got a live action movie that, as much as people want to say it was good, was not good, and I would love if they. I want to redo was Alita.
Hey! I enjoyed that movie a lot, but I understand.
They tried to do too much too soon in that movie. I'm sitting there watching. I was like, "Wait, we're already at rollerball? What's going on? No, this is like
think of it this way.
Guys.
Well, think about it. You gotta think of it this way. If you only got one shot to make the movie, what are you gonna do?
And okay, so that's a whole different discussion because
hold on.
I understand.
Give me a second. Let me get this real quick.
All right.
It's sorry, Vinny.
Hello? Yes. No, I'm podcast recording. What's wrong?
Huh? You got a phone call.
Oh, I'll call you once we're done. We're almost done here pretty quickly. All right. Bye. What are y'all doing? Driving? No, I'm a podcast recording. Oh, okay. I'll get off the phone. I just want to talk to you. Thanks, Dad. Anyway.
But all right. So back to what I was about to say. That's something like that. I understand the idea of, hey, this is our one shot. Let's just throw it all against the wall. But at the same time, doing that doesn't always work. And for me, it didn't quite work with it. Was just too much was happening too fast. There was like Jennifer Connelly for no reason. She had no purpose being in that movie. She's like, hey, I'm Jennifer Connelly and I'm here for 2 scenes and I'm gone. You're never gonna see me again. And it's like, okay, thanks Jennifer Connelly for coming by. We really appreciate it. And just moving on and just blazing along. I'm like, all right, can we like, we need to sit down and we need to focus on these characters and we need to make this movie do well. And if this movie does well, then we get Rollerball. And that's what, like, that's the goal that we're getting towards is Rollerball. But like, let's do good with this part of it. And yeah, like with Aquaman, right? Like Aquaman was literally like, okay, everybody, we're gonna have Ocean Master, Black Manta, and the Deep. Just boom, here's all like the three biggest villains of Aquaman. Bam, one movie. Let's do it, because no one's gonna come watch the movie about the guy that talks to fish. And then it did great. It's like, okay, I guess we're bringing Black Manta back, and we're just gonna do that, but better this time. Cool, guys, let's do it. And I'm down for that. Like, make badass Black Manta. I'm on board. But yeah, it's if you're gonna throw everything on the wall, just make sure you set it up and make it work nice. And I'm good. And yeah, Alita just didn't quite do that for me. There was just a little too much of everything in that movie. But
And
Speaking of Jennifer Connelly, another movie that didn't get a fair shake, Rocketeer.
yes,
God
Almighty,
yes,
right.
That movie did not get a fair shake.
That movie is that is the one of the number one movies that we would all agree on. Everybody on the whole podcast cast, not this episode, but all of us would agree on that. The Rocketeer is the movie that should have gotten more sequels and more more everything.
Yeah.
Instead we have a little girl with the do you know about the TV series?
No.
There's a little CG. Yeah. So there is a continuation of the Rocketeer, and it's a little girl now who has the jetpack. And I'm not going to beat on the cartoon for showing a little girl catching a full-grown man, and all she's got is a jetpack on, and it's established that she's just a normal little girl. So how on earth he didn't just like tear her arms clean out of her socket? But I don't know if it's still ongoing. I just know that it came out, and I was like, and what was so bad, what made me so sad was right before I found out about that TV series, I watched, it was a short film that was done for the anniversary of The Rocketeer. And the short film was amazing. It was just a series of little scenes of the Rocketeer, like fighting a mobster and flying around, and there being a car chase with Tommy guns and all this good stuff. And then I saw that, and then I heard, hey, they're doing a Rocketeer series. I'm like, oh my God, if it's anything like that animated short, I'm on board. And then I saw it and I was like, oh.
No, thank you.
Well, that was a missed opportunity. But
I think they could recast it and catch the same.
Yeah, they literally could recast the main two, and then Cliff Seacourt, and was it Betty?
Yep.
Can't remember what her last name was. I know she was modeled after Betty Page. Well,
but yeah, and since everything is all about interconnected universes, just make it a part of you take Indiana Jones and the Rocketeer and the Phantom and the Shadow, and you just blend them all together, and you have an interconnected pulp universe.
Flash Gordon.
There you go. Oh, and Flash Gordon. There you go. Yeah, just take.
You do the Defenders of the Earth live action movie with.
Yes.
And isn't The Rock? Wait, is The Rock still doing the Doc Savage movie?
I don't know. I know he's doing Black Adam and stuff. But
he's put all his focus into Black Adam.
Yeah.
Thing is, Disney owns everything for the Rocketeer. If they really wanted to push the envelope, they could throw him in Doctor Strange.
Yeah, you can put him in the Marvel universe.
They could throw him in the Marvel.
No, because you could do the.
I know that y'all are big Marvel fans. I don't put the Rocketeer in Marvel. I don't need Rocketeer with Iron Man. For the love of God, I want something outside of Marvel.
I know that.
But anyways, if
you're gonna do that, we'd have to at least do. The sad thing is like we missed our opportunity because like Billy Zane was great as the Phantom. And that was another movie that should have got another sequel, but they just did horribly in the box office. But it was a great thing. Well, in Flash Gordon, but yeah, you would definitely need to do a more modern take on Flash Gordon now.
If we're gonna go down the Disney route of things, two more that I just thought of. I'll start with the easy one because it got a sequel and then it almost got a third but didn't. Was Tron, right?
Yes. Tron.
Seeing a continuation of Tron would be great, even though Daft Punk is gone now. They may come back.
They could come back, man. I'm telling you, they could come back for the movie.
Just for the Tron soundtrack. But then the other one, which I hear rumors and then they go away, and then I hear rumors and they go away, was one of the movies that I loved growing up. I watched more than Star Wars was The Last Starfighter.
Oh yeah,
right? Okay. Yeah.
I would love to see. I would love to see more Starfighter. Starfighter would be great. Seeing a continuation of Starfighter, them rebuilding the squadrons, because main bad guy escapes in the end, right? He ducks out of that little chute and he's gone.
Yep.
Right. And it was horrible campy nonsense with that guy, but I'd be more than fine with that. Just more Death Blossom. Just more Death Blossom is all I'm good for.
Okay, so if we're gonna talk about
I was about to say, in fact, I blame Starfighter for making my favorite Gundam Heavy Arms, because the first time I ever saw Heavy Arms, and it was in the opening of the show, and you just see him with the chest opens up and all the missiles and everything. I'm like, it's the last Starfighter as a mecha. Yes, I'm down. I love this guy.
Yeah.
Was it well, if you're gonna do Last Starfighter, I know that the Ernest Cline's book Armada would be another good book to be made into a movie that fits that criteria of like the Last Starfighter. You know, I know I guess we'll have to wait to see how Ready Player 2 does in the theater and how faithful they're going to be towards the book, because I know they changed a lot from the first book, and it was still a great movie. But it's almost the same premise, instead of like but it's the whole world in threat from this alien race versus this far galaxy that's being a threat. I just watched that too with Edward. He enjoyed it a lot, Last Starfighter.
Yeah, I love that movie, man. And what's funny is, like, you watch that movie, and for that movie being set in the 80s, it's not like, outside of him playing on an arcade cabinet, it's not really that badly dated in terms of like what's happening in the movie, right?
There's certain movies that came out in the 80s that hold their, what they basically
Hold their water.
Yeah, they don't look dated. They don't look like it's not something that could have happened, or like nothing in the movie breaks you out of the emergence. Like, The Thing, going back to The Thing, that's one movie right there that you can watch it and there's nothing in that movie that will break your attention to what's going on. It doesn't look like it took place. It could look like it could take place now. It's not like it's watching The Black Hole or Tron, the original Tron, even though it's still a great movie, but you can see it visually dated. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, Starfighter had like some of the
the CGI, the CGI for the ship was
well. It's the worst. The roughest part of that movie is when they go chasing the one ship inside of that asteroid, whatever it was. Yes, that part of it that made my head hurt a little bit rewatching it. But outside of that, though, like all the rest of that movie is just really well done. Again, there's outside of a few little minor things, it doesn't just scream 80s at you. It doesn't even really scream a specific time period at you. Like, the way they're dressed is very just normal looking. There aren't like weird bell bottoms and crap everywhere. Everybody's just very normally dressed. And so you could very easily seeing it taking place like almost in today, right? Sans the cell phones, right? You just have to put away, okay, people don't have cellular phones on them. You remove that little aspect to it, and it can easily fit in all kinds of different eras. But yeah, I really want them to do more of that, because I love that. I love that movie so much. It was such a good movie.
Yeah, there's just a lot of missed opportunities for stuff that needs to have a sequel. Out of all the John Carpenter movies that we could have gotten a sequel for, as much as I enjoyed the comedy of Escape from LA, I would have loved a Big Trouble in Little China 2, or some kind of like continuation of Jack Burton going on to some new adventure somewhere else and meeting another friend, instead of it being Wang with him again. That was what was really good about the comic that they did that was going on for a while, where like Jack had to go into the underworld to fight David Lopan because the way he killed him, what made it to where his spirit didn't get to rest easily in the afterlife. It was hilarious. But
All right, let me ask you this: what'd you think of the John Carter movie, the one with Taylor Kitsch?
I really enjoyed it. I mean, there was little bitty things to it that overall I really enjoyed that movie. I thought it was for it being solely about John Carpenter, they nailed a lot of the aspects to it, right? They Woola, right? His dog. The Tharks aren't as massive as we're used to seeing, like in all the Frank Frazetta art for it, but overall I thought their design was well done. Like it was a very well put together movie. It was one of those things like we talked about earlier, right? It was an unfortunate
No budget behind
victim of time. Right. Well, I mean, nobody understood what the hell was going on with it because, famously what was it? Mars Needs Moms came out before that just horrifically tanked. And it seemed to drive Disney to want to distance itself from anything Mars related. So instead of it being John Carter of Mars or the Princess of Mars, which is really what it should have been called, right? It just got turned into John Carter. Everybody just kind of said, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen him develop more of it. I mean, because I did enjoy it. Yeah, there were some things going on, but you know what? First movies can be clunky, and then you come back with something as a sequel and improve it.
Well, because I mean the books, right? It wasn't following the books because they had already kind of skipped through a couple things, but like the books of John Carter get so much more interesting. Like you get into what's her name? Because there was a character they didn't even introduce in that book series where the giant cat creatures, she can actually control them. What is her name? That's going to drive me nuts. But there's all sorts of really cool concepts that come up in the later books, and that's where a movie that hasn't come out, but it did get a couple, right? It got a movie and a mini series, and then they've got the new one coming out that I hope does well because I'd love to see more of it. Is Dune, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. We'll get to see what the new movie is like next year. I believe it is.
No, I think it's this year because that's one of the ones that's supposed to be. It's later this year, or unless they change the release date on it. But I thought it was coming.
Everything gets bumped. I just say next year until I see something that says, okay.
Yeah, if unofficial. Yeah.
Thuvia.
I'll be honest. I didn't watch John Carter. I didn't get a chance to. Yeah, I did. I know Dad was all up about it. He loved it, and then he was just upset with like some of the things here and there, and then that we'll never get to get a sequel for it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, but if you can just sit back and say, okay, I know enough about John Carter to get me through the storyline without having to play catch up, it's a good popcorn flick. It is a very good sit back and watch it, and not pick it apart.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean that it is the genesis of it. It was the original just turn your brain off action stuff going on, right? I mean, the second book opens up with him on the River Is immediately being attacked by these crazy monsters, right? It's like story is there and there's an interesting, world building and history that they do to it, but you don't have to pay that hard of attention to it. You just sit down and watch a dude leap miles into the air and fight giant, four-armed white gorillas.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. And then a weird little lizard dog that can, run around the planet at super speed. And I'm fine with that. But it's funny because like we had the John Purfoy Solomon Kane movie
that was pretty good.
That was really good. It's like you have those, and it goes back to again pulps, right? And there's been a whole resurgence of a lot of the pulp stories, and there's like a whole movement I think called like new pulp or something like that, where they're trying to sort of bring back that style of storytelling to a lot of stories, right? Just telling quick, fun, entertaining tales of adventure and fighting ne'er-do-wells and all that stuff. And it'd be cool to see that would be another one, right? Anything of you go to Conan, Solomon Kane, John Carter. You could do any of the Pulp movies now that we've had Kong versus Godzilla, right? Doing Hollow Earth stuff, and now that the Hollow Earth is kind of in people's minds, you can do movies where they do go to the Journey to the Center of the Earth type stuff, which they did that absolutely awful rock version of it. But was that the Brendan Fraser one? Because there were two
was
movies.
The Rock.
Was it
I
The
never
Rock?
saw it, so I don't know. I don't remember. I don't write up.
Yeah, I don't remember.
There was one that they did around the same time that had Brendan Fraser. It looked almost exactly like it. But yeah, I think Journey to the Center of the Earth was The Rock. But then there was a weird one that Brendan Fraser did that was another, hey, we're going to a place that has like prehistoric life in it, and it's all super ultra bright, colorful stuff to it. It just, both of those did not look great, right? Not everything needs to be Chris Nolan dark and gritty, but at the same time, it's like we can tune down the bubblegum just a bit, right? Just a little bit. That's a movie series that got its due, and then they screwed it up with the whole Universal monster verse. Was the Mummies. I need to sit down. It's funny thinking about Pulps, because I was actually talking with the kids about that the other day. We were sort of talking about, somehow we got on the topic of Indiana Jones, and I was explaining to them kind of what like pulp stories and cliffhanger stories and all that stuff were back in the day. And I started showing them trailers for like the Mummies movies with Brendan Fraser and all them in it, which was a great little series of the little trilogy of films and all that. I need to sit down with the kids and go through some of those, because there's just so many good movies of just fun little adventure flicks like that.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff back then. Let's go ahead and wrap up. It's getting late. I'm not as like 100% today, so I feel off. I mean, I already feel off anyway, but I mean, I just all right, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. You have some movies that you feel that should have gotten sequels, let us know below. If you have ideas of what those could have been, let us know that as well too. We love to hear what people think and about different topics and things we discuss. So until then, have a good one. Later.